We're going to go from one great guest to another great guest. We have Shobhan Saxena. How you doing, Shobhan? You doing okay this morning?
Oh, fine. Thank you, Jamal. How are you? Good morning to you and all your listeners.
Yeah, thank you for joining me, man. You sent me. Oh, just for the audience, let me give you your bio so the people know who you are. Going immediately into the story. I'm Shobhan Saxena. He's an Indian journalist based out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, in a career spanning more than 30 years. He has reported from the Times of India, the Hindu, the Indian Express, and various other publications in India. Right now, he's an international correspondent for DD India, the international channel of India's public broadcaster. Shobhan, thank you for joining me, man. Um, the Trump administration has, if I remember correctly, nearly 20% of U.S. assets in the Caribbean. Like that is a huge amount of military and manpower that is effectively in this area. They're apparently training in Puerto Rico. They're training in jungles, almost as if they're training for jungle warfare. Um, and you wrote a piece where you hit me up and you said you think you understand, or at the very least have a sense of Trump's endgame. And it is just so the audience can see it for themselves. This right here. Trump's spear of the South, quote unquote, sparks regional alarm as Venezuela braces for U.S. moves. Washington declares Operation Spear of the South against narco terrorists, cartel heads, Nicolas Maduro, as it moves to heavy firepower in the Caribbean. Observers say the move could be aimed at regime change in Caracas and reasserting U.S. power over the region amid rising influence of Russia and China. And before I let you in, just today, we get news that Cartel del Sol, the group that doesn't exist, is put on the foreign terrorist list, which
Yeah.
effectively put Maduro on the list because he's supposedly the head of a narco state. Um, what is going on with this?
Jamal, I think that let's look at it from two different aspects. One is why is the Trump administration doing what they're doing? And what is the end game here, actually? So, Trump presidency is in all sorts of trouble. All
Mm-hmm.
the promises he made about the economy, they have not come true. All the promises he made about the tariff war against China and other countries, they're falling short of expectations. So I think he's facing a lot of heat at the home. I'm not even getting into the all the controversy about the Epstein files and how he's facing a challenge from within the party, from the MAGA movement. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey, they're really taken on him. So I think Trump right now politically is not in a very good situation. I think this is the could be the weakest point of his presidency. And like all American presidents, when they're in trouble, they want a diversion. And what best diversion than attacking a country which they consider as enemy or which is branded as enemy for the American people? I think the easiest thing in America is to sell a war to American people. But I think right now the American people may not be in the mood for a new war because a poll came out, I think yesterday or day before, in which 60% or more than 70% Americans are against attack on Venezuela, right? Okay. And as you rightly put, I mean, 20% of the American forces are in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, the TNT,
Mm-hmm.
around Venezuela, around in the waters around Venezuela. But I think to to make an actual invasion, a land invasion, you need more than that. You don't invade a country like in Venezuela with 15,000 people. You
Right,
remember the Iraq War and the first Iraq War too. It took
right.
months of preparation, and they have hundreds of thousands of troops in Kuwait, and despite the fact that they had military bases already in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, and still they sent hundreds of thousands of troops to mount an invasion on Iraq. So I don't think a land invasion of Venezuela is a possibility because this force is not enough. And as I wrote in my article, Venezuela is not going to be a cakewalk. Venezuela has a formidable army. They have more than 300,000 soldiers. They have Russian Sukhoi 30 fighter jets, S-300 missiles. Venezuela is quite capable of defending itself. It's not Iraq, it's not Afghanistan. They are capable of defending themselves. So if the US is planning a big attack on Venezuela, they need You need a lot more forces, a lot more weapons in the region. That is not the that's not the case at the moment. So, what is the U.S. or Trump administration is trying to do here in Venezuela? So as I wrote in my article, I think the real purpose could be a regime change operation. So the idea is to put pressure on the army, put pressure on the establishment in Venezuela, create some kind of fear so there's some kind of internal disturbance inside Venezuela, which takes Nicolas Maduro out of power. I think this could be the game. But given all the indications, all the signs coming from Caracas, from Venezuela, I don't think that's going to happen. Maduro is in a very, very strong position. He enjoys the support of the military.
Right.
He enjoys support of the large section of society. I saw his video. He was dancing yesterday, enjoying his birthday party. So
He
I
can
think,
dance. He can cut a rug. Yeah. He can
yeah,
dance his
and
ass off.
I don't think he's really bothered by so much by all these threats coming every day, and all this branding a cartel which probably doesn't exist as a terrorist organization, and the president of a country as a leader of the terrorist organization is beyond ridiculous. And even even the US doesn't have much support on this issue, even from its allies. I mean, there was a report that UK is going to cut off intelligence sharing with US regarding Caribbean waters, and the French also give a statement saying this is not really legal what the US is doing. And you can't forget the region, the important countries like Brazil and Colombia and other countries and regions have opposed it, and they're not very happy with it. So if you take all these factors together, I think it's more like a muscle flexing, show of strength threat, but an actual war, in my opinion, is not going to happen. Yes, the US is quite capable of doing damage by launching some missiles and rockets like they did in Iran some months ago. That is their capacity. That is their strength. They can launch missiles from a distance, from a safety of distance. You can attack any country. But if you really want to do a regime change operation, destroy the infrastructure, you will have to send the boots on the ground. And I don't think US has the capacity or appetite at the moment to send troops or boots on the ground in Venezuela.
So you think these are just threats, that this much military hardware that is in the area is done purely for the thing of, um, if we can threaten Maduro enough, we can create enough pressure, then internal elements of Venezuela itself will take over and get rid of Maduro. If we put the what is it called, the bounty high enough, if we work with opposition groups in the region, then maybe we can get rid of them. I mean, Maduro does seem to be bothered, or at the very least worried. I mean, do you buy the reporting that's coming out places like the New York Times, where they pointed out that Maduro was trying to make deals with the Trump administration to cut down the pressure, and that the Trump administration effectively was going with the Marco Rubio angle, where Rubio was saying, "Look, we need to take Venezuela." And part of the issue was Russia, China, Iran, and the relationship that Russia, China, and Iran effectively has with Venezuela being in their backyard. Where do you place that? Or you don't place that at all? You still place that under this notion of, no, these are just threats. This is not the U.S. Risking putting boots on the ground in some kind of regime change operation to get rid of Maduro. They want the regime change effectively on the cheap.
Yeah, mind you, Jamal, this is not just a threat to Venezuela, it's a threat to the whole region.
Yes.
They're giving a signal to all the countries in the region, to Colombia, to Brazil, everyone. I think what is happening here, and this is based on what I wrote in my article for the Hindu, that the US is reclaiming its supremacy over the Western Hemisphere, in especially South America. They already have a lot of power and influence in Central America, maybe not so in Mexico, but other countries they have military bases, other things, not in Cuba, not in Mexico, but they even have a military base in Cuba, practically Guantanamo Bay. So
Right.
I think, yeah. So I think what has happened, if you listen to people like Steve Bannon, the ideologue who's the ideologue of the MAGA movement, and he made this point many times in his various interviews after Trump got elected, how the United States is going to reclaim Western Hemisphere from Greenland to Panama. and then down to South America. I mean, this is their idea of multipolarity. This is our region, this is our hemisphere, we'll dominate it, and other countries, China or Russia or other country, BRICS countries, they can dominate other parts of the world. But this is our hemisphere. This is Monroe Doctrine on steroids, actually. Is going to happen or not? That's another issue because of the ground reality, the geopolitical situation in the past 30, 40 years has changed completely. We are not in the 19th century anymore. We are not in the 1960s. This is not the Cold War era. This is a different situation altogether. Countries have tasted freedom. They have got rid of dictatorships. Their countries like BRICS are now major leaders in the world, are very important geopolitical players. Other countries want to join BRICS. And almost all countries in South America have a very good trading relations with China. And China is the biggest trading partner of all South American countries. They
Yes.
also have a lot of trade with Russia, and it's growing with India. Other BRICS countries are showing interest in joining the BRICS group. So the situation is very, very different. But nevertheless, the US is trying to assert its hegemony in the region. And by threatening Venezuela, because they think Venezuela is the weakest country in the region in terms of economy, because its economy has been damaged badly because of the all the sanctions put over the years. They can't sell the oil. It has the one of the highest reserves of crude petroleum, but they can't refine it. They can't sell it. Of course, the economy has suffered. So I think they're trying to threaten Venezuela, hoping to engineer some kind of regime change in Venezuela and give a message to other countries in the world. If you don't accept our supremacy, our hegemony in the region, the same thing can happen to you. That is a message. I think, yeah, I think it's just a more than a show of his strength,
Mhm.
a message to the whole region and to other players in the world also that this is our region and we'll do what we want to do here.
If indeed this is about the region as a whole, where does the region fall on this? I mean, does the US have allies, for example, where they can set up bases closer to Venezuela? Um, and is there pushback from the various countries that are in the region? I know Petro has been very aggressive in pushing back on this. I know Lula has made comments about his concern recently. But has the region itself come up with what am I looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? A cohesive strategy as a region, as opposed to individual states that are giving their commentary?
Well, I don't think there's a cohesive strategy as a bloc. South America is not a bloc.
Right.
There's a bloc, Mercosur and all, but that's an economic bloc, yeah. But there are powerful countries like Brazil is an important is the most important, is the biggest economy, is the biggest country in the region. Colombia is another very important country, and both these countries have spoken against the possibility of war in the region. There has not been a war in South America since the 19th century. There was a war between Brazil and Paraguay way back in 19th century, and it was provoked by the British,
Mhm.
as usual. So so I don't. Yeah, but I don't because there was a survey, or there was a referendum in Ecuador about setting up military bases in that country, and that proposal was rejected.
That
So I
was under
don't
Correa,
think.
I believe.
Sorry.
That was
Yeah.
under Correa. Yeah.
No, recently again. No, it happened this
Oh,
week.
the most recent. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, they don't want a military base. Of course, the country like Argentina under Javier Milei will be more than happy to provide any kind of support to the American forces. But Argentina is down there. It's very far from Venezuela. It's very far from the Caribbean, and they have their own problems. So I don't think they will actively get involved in a war if it happens. I think there's a lot of posturing, there's a lot of politicking going on, but I don't think. But I think if you look at the mood in general, I think countries may have problem with Venezuela. They may not like Nicolas Maduro, but nobody is asking for, or nobody wants an actual war in South America or a forced regime change, because given the history of this continent, the people here have suffered for 30, 40 years from the 60s and 70s and 80s. everybody knows what happened in Chile.
Yes,
The brutal
Pinochet.
dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet, removal of Allende. It happened in Brazil. It happened in Argentina. All those. So people have very, very bitter memories about the bloody past of the region. And I think this operation, Southern Spear, whatever the Americans are calling it, is a reminder of American military intervention in the region that can trigger a lot of they can trigger a lot of instability in the region. And the focus of the region, whether the right wing government or left wing government or center right or center left, nobody wants a military conflict in the region because all the countries right now are focused on the economic development. That is their focus. They might be faltering, they may not succeed. That's another story. But nobody wants a war in the region. And the US doesn't have the kind of military alliances they used to have here in the 60s and 70s when they actually engineered all the coup in the region and installed military dictatorships, including Brazil. So given this history and given the present, I don't see anyone is going to openly support American attack on Venezuela. It will be seen not an attack on Venezuela, it will be seen as an attack on South American continent.
And what will South America do if that attack takes place? I mean, that's what it boils down to, right? I mean, this is the issue of whether you have enough swords to make it painful to prevent any kind of attack or any kind of. I mean, at least that's the way my mind works, and that's the way seemingly the U.S. works. If we do this, what will be the consequences of this? And it's great. It's a gamble, right? I mean, as you point out, this doesn't seem to be enough troops in order to engineer some kind of overwhelming regime change with boots on the ground. What about political opposition in Venezuela? People like Machado. What I mean, she's calling for the open attack of her own country, which is just mind blowing when you think about it. But does she have political support in that sense to try to engineer some kind of, like, for example, not Honduras. What is the other one? Bolivia. Bolivia is a really good example. You have an election. Evo Morales wins the election overwhelmingly, and you get let's say, a Western organization claiming that the polls were rigged. You get a right wing mob, basically a junta that effectively takes over the government, dragging people through the streets and everything else. And it came out of nowhere, seemingly came out of nowhere. Is that what the US is trying to push for in Venezuela? Effectively working with, let's say, groups that are on the ground in the region where the US military and the amount of US military becomes less relevant because you have already either mercenaries or people within the country itself that is willing to take over most of the, let's say, the heavy lifting of regime change.
Let me go back into history. When the British came to India in the 17th, 18th century, they didn't
Mhm.
invade India in one go. I mean, they spread across the country slowly and slowly. First, they came to the eastern part and southern part, and then they spread slowly to the central and northern part. And the whole process took almost 100 years. Always working with the local elite. So the local elite in all these uh, part in the different princely states of India were their partners. So using the policy of divide and rule, that is an old British playbook. That's how they conquered Asia. That's how they conquered the world. And Americans use the same playbook, divide and rule. So they're working with the Venezuelan so-called opposition. I mean, I don't know, Mariana Machado, she claims she's in hiding, but she's making videos almost every day. She's making videos, she's active on social media where she's hiding. And what kind of politician, Venezuelan she is, that she's asking Americans to attack her own country? I mean, she has no sense of history. They haven't seen what happened to Iraq, what happened to Afghanistan, what is done to Libya. So I mean, if you have any sense of honesty, any sense of history, you'll see that you'll understand the true implications of this possible war on your own country. I think, of course, 100% population may not like Nicolas Maduro. He may not have support of even let's say 60% or 40% of the population, but he enjoys support. And I don't think the opposition is really very active at the moment in domestic politics. And I think majority of the opposition politicians will understand the implications of attack on a country. If an attack happens, it will be an attack on the Venezuelan infrastructure, refineries, petroleum depots, telecommunication network, bridges. That's what Americans do. When they went into Iraq, before going into Iraq, they destroyed 2,000 bridges in Iraq.
Wow.
2,000 bridges were destroyed in Iraq. Everything was taken out, and then they went in. And they talk about, oh, the Russians are taking so much time in conquering Ukraine. Russians have not really attacked Ukraine in that sense. No, they've not attacked the civilian areas. They've not attacked civilian infrastructure. The trains are still running between Europe and Ukraine. The
Yep.
tunnels are still working between Ukraine and Europe. So Russians have been, uh, not done what Americans are used to do. So I think, given this history, I think anyone asking for attack on your country, I think, in my opinion, is simply an act of treason, nothing else. And that person has been given a Nobel Peace Prize by the Norwegians. I think that's putting a seal of approval on this Donald Trump's um, uh, uh, possible war in Venezuela. They didn't have the courage to give Nobel Peace Prize to Trump, but they kind of greenlit his plan to attack Venezuela or to threaten Venezuela by giving a Nobel Peace Prize to Mariana Machado.
Shobhan, I'm going to put your article at the bottom of this video. From your mouth to God's ears. I mean, I hope it really is just pressure. I guess my concern is that pressure sometimes can, like, how do you back away, if that makes sense? Like, how do you put this much armaments, this much military, this much pressure, then put them on the foreign terrorist watch list? You make all of these arguments that Maduro is head of a narco empire. And then you say, okay, we were just playing and we're going to now back away from this. That seems to be very hard to pull off and very hard to do. I guess my concern is that this has become an escalating issue where you start off with threats. You start off with, okay, we're going to try to engineer a regime change. Okay, well, he has too much political support. And then you're stuck with the question of, now what? Do we walk away or do we continue to escalate? That's my
Yeah.
concern, that what starts off as threats eventually becomes this kind of forced military campaign because the president doesn't want to look weak in the process of backing away from what he considered to be a drug empire. I suppose we'll see. I suppose we'll see.
Yeah, I think, well, one important point I would like to make here is that this is as much as Trump's war as much as Marco Rubio's, because
Yes,
I think Trump is already a lame duck president because this is a second term. He's not he may claim whatever. He's not going to run for president again unless something drastic happens. So I think within the MAGA movement, within the Republican Party, a kind of fight has already started. Who's going to replace? Who's going to be the candidate
J
from
Vance.
GOP in 2028? I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, the position she has taken, I think could be a step in that direction. There's going to be a fight for ownership of MAGA movement. Who's going to own it? And Marco Rubio, given his background, Florida, he comes from there, and Florida is a Miami is the is a
Miami Cubans.
a bit of
Yeah.
bit of vipers, all the so, that plays a very, very important role in deciding the at least Republican in politics, and Donald Trump is also based in Florida for a reason. So I think the Marco Rubio is also trying to position himself as some kind of successor to Trump. So I think we can see some, but I think there's a lot of American domestic politics angle here. Very important angle is the American domestic politics and this positioning by our different leaders. Like Marjorie has a completely different position on the awards abroad. She is not
Yes.
supportive because the I don't think the MAGA supporters have any appetite for a new war any part of the world. They don't want it, definitely. Not all of them, but a vast majority of them do not want a war. So I think it will depend on a lot of factors. The domestic politics will decide very much what's going to happen in Venezuela. But as you said, right, when you escalate, it's very difficult to de-escalate because this escalation has its own dynamics,
Hmm.
and then you may have to do something, if for nothing, just to save your face, because
Yes.
you have you've spoken so much about, so much rhetoric, so much threat you've done. You've got to do something after that. You can't back off, because if you back off, then I think there are people like warmongers like Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, and and even Democrats. Some Democrats, they're going to go after you. Oh, what happened? You didn't do this. You promised a war, and you didn't deliver it. That is a crime in U.S. If you promise a war, you go to war. So I think
Yes.
this is as much a show within the U.S. as much in the South American theater for American hegemony and American dominance.
Shobhan, thank you for this, man. You do damn good work, and I love your reporting. And I'm going to put this article at the bottom just so the audience can see it for themselves and read it for themselves. Like I said, from your mouth to God's ears. I hope this is just a show. I mean, I think it was Caleb who pointed out in the first term, Donald Trump pressured and then backed off. But this is year one, right? There is no Trump and Russia stuff. There's none of that stuff. And the guy that he seems to put in the head of it is a complete ideologue. But hopefully this does not turn into something kinetic, any more kinetic than it is. I'm Shobhan Saxena. He is an Indian journalist based out of Sao Paulo, Brazil. In a career spanning more than 30 years, he's reported from the Times of India, the Hindu, the Indian Express, and various other publications in India. Right now, he's an international correspondent for DD India, the international channel for India's public broadcaster. Shobhan, you have a great rest of your day, man. Thank you for this.
Thanks very much, Jamal. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Absolutely, man. Be safe. Thank you. All right. We have come to the